Welcome to Tangerine Insights Cafe. Adversity Quotient, looking beyond the lens of EQ and IQ. We all know about the concept of IQ. It's become passé. IQ gave way to another concept, EQ.
IQ is nothing but a yardstick to measure intelligence of human beings. So how good you are with calculation, how attentive you are, what is your language innateness, how is your learning ability, how is your logical thinking.
As we move on from IQ to EQ, what is EQ? EQ is essentially more focused on interpersonal relationships, sociability, and empathy. EQ have been there, almost we all understand it perhaps. So let's move on to EQ.
So adversity quotient, the way both of us we see it, it's all about raising yourself above the occasion of adversity and showing the grit and resilience and hope and optimism to think that this adversity or an event or a difficult situation is not going to define you as a person. So it's a trait which is all about being independent. It's all about being even having that aggression to march ahead in the situation you are into, looking at the North Star, looking at your vision, and not being deterred by the negativity or the pessimism or the difficulties of the situations. That's how we look at adversity.
And yes, absolutely. And if I would like to give some single names to adversity quotient, it will be grit, your determination, resilience, your willpower. These are the things which basically are the most important to have during the times when it's adverse.
So, according to you, what is the main difference between emotional quotient and adversity quotient?
Well, I think adversity quotient is more internal. Emotional quotient would be about, as I said, being more sociable, being able to forge that relationship with the other people around you. It's a lot to do with relationships and how you deal with others' emotions and your emotions with others. But where adversity quotient really raises its bar and it goes to a high level, it's rather your relationship with your own self. It's more internalized, it's more about the power within which you harness to kind of beat the odds which are around you. So let's talk about the dimensions of AQ. When EQ stands for being sociable and how you connect with others, AQ starts deep inside you, and that's your core, C-O-R-E. Where C stands for control, O stands for origin and ownership, R stands for reach, and E stands for endurance. So let's break these dimensions and pillars in the context of adversity quotient, and let's talk about each of them one by one.
So C stands for control, as Sean mentioned. So what is control? What is the feeling of control over adversity? So it's not very different from feeling in control of yourself and the situation. It's your ability to have full control over the adverse situation and being able to predict and therefore act accordingly. The more in control you feel, less you feel apprehensive, in doubt, the less agony and apathy you feel. It is nothing but humans' ability to kind of predict and then being prepared for the situation. It is not getting carried away by the situation, but having that control. And very often, this whole control is a key success factor behind how you react to a particular situation. Therefore, it leads to a far more objective decision making as compared to when you think you are not in control of the situation. So that's control for you.
I think it's a great point of view on control. So let me move on to the next one, and that is the big O, and which is the origin and ownership. Now, what is origin and ownership in this whole model? O stands for the origin of the adversity. I think it's very important for us, when adversity strikes, to understand where exactly this adversity is coming from. Because when we understand the root cause behind this adversity, which is hitting us in our work environment, in our personal life, we have a better control, obviously, of the situation. When you know the root cause, when you know the origin, shows that you're doing research. You're more confident of basically perhaps the reason behind the adversity. Having said that, there are some adversities where it's very difficult to know the origin, but at least the whole attempt to know where it's coming from makes the person much more confident and in control of the situation. The second dimension of the big O is the ownership. Now, to what degree do I own the outcome? How likely am I to step up and do anything to improve the situation? That's the mindset. It's about standing up to the occasion and owning it. It's about accepting that there is an adversity, accepting the difficulty around you, taking the challenge head on, and finding ways how to solve it. Having said that, let's move on to reach.
So, reach is all about what extent you think the adverse event is being able to influence various aspects of your life. Let's assume someone has lost his or her job. So, if the person feels that losing a job is going to affect the person financially, emotionally, and maybe it is also going to impact the family relationship, so on and so forth, you can understand that in that person's head, this whole adverse situation has very large reach, because various aspect of person's life is going to get impacted by this adverse event. So the person with high AQ will put things in perspective and probably not let the weekends go in vain just because he or she has a bad day in office. So it's all about limiting the reach of the adverse event by putting things in perspective, accepting that something has happened, but then not allowing it to take control of other aspects of life. So it will be very relevant to say that reach is all about quarantining the whole event.
A low AQ worker would extrapolate, turning the single failure perhaps into proof that he or she is worthless or stupid.
Yeah, that's right.
Having spoken about reach, the last aspect of this entire core dimension of AQ is endurance. Endurance, as it kind of stands, it's all about how much you can endure. We've all talked about how much a person can endure pain. It's all about here how much you can endure the existing adversity around you. So, having talked about endurance, endurance is how long will the adversity or the cause last. It's a calculation in the mind. It's about telling you, okay, this is the situation and how long it's going to continue. Because if you assess the situation and the time for how much it lasts, also mentally calculate how to cope with that particular situation if you have the time frame in mind, and accordingly you have to build tactics which can be short term to strategies which can be long term, looking at the time horizon of this adversity.
So, Sean, I think this whole concept of endurance is extremely critical because there's so many examples in front of my eyes. So we have seen so many examples in our own life of people with very, very high IQ who have been super achiever, highly gifted and talented, crumbling under pressure in the event of ambiguity or structural changes within the organization. And that to me is a clear sign of low AQ.
Once the organization sees that you're enduring your adversity, once you're flourishing, you're focusing on the work, the organization will sooner or later acknowledge you for that.
So Sean, there are a lot of examples where we have seen that the most challenging opportunity, I'm using the word opportunity rather than project because they're really opportunity in disguise of a challenge, come to people who are extremely resilient. Management just feels that this person can do the job. These are the people who are actually celebrating adversity quotient. And these are the people who also get challenging projects and therefore thrive in the organization.
The concept of life is changing. We talk about new normal.
Next time, when you're looking to hire a resource, apart from IQ and EQ, definitely test the AQ of the person.
I just went online and there are several tests nowadays to test the AQ of people. Why do people go and take a test?